Hey, well, good evening, everybody. And hey, thank y'all for being here on a Thursday night. It's not lost on me that this is being recorded at 7 p.m. on a Thursday night where you can be doing almost anything else. And the fact that you chose to be here with us, I really do appreciate that. And in return, I'm going to try to give you everything I got here for the next 30 minutes to respect your time. And I know a lot of people couldn't make it tonight, and they told us that in advance. So we are going to be recording this and we'll send it out afterwards. And if you think there's anyone else that could benefit from this, we encourage you to share that with them as well. But for those that did make it tonight, I want to give you all a little extra treat. At the end of this, we want to get everyone's names that was live here tonight. And by the way, I see when people are signing in, for some reason, Richard, looking at you, your name is Xaneth Thompson on here for some reason. So that must be a bug. Go ahead and rename yourselves. We want to put everyone that came into a drawing. We're going to be giving away one of these really cool Arctic cooler bags, has our DT logo on it. It's probably one of the most practical Arctic bags out there. We're going to be giving these to our clients next year as a move-in survival kit. We stuffed it full of goodies for their first moving in. So afterwards, make sure your names are up there. We'll do a drawing and somebody will win that. And we'll be calling you all in the next day or two about that. So as more people are trickling in here, let me just kind of explain why we wanted to do this tonight. Most of y'all know Xanath and I are entering into a new phase of our marriage and lives. We're empty nesters now. You know, our last kiddo just went off to school at Sam Houston in Huntsville. And that's caused Xanath and I to have new conversations. You know, what do we want the next 5, 10, 15, or more years to look like? You know, inevitably that conversation turns to finances and into investing. So we've asked ourselves, like many clients have asked us, hey, you know, should we buy a property in Huntsville for Charlotte to live in with some of her friends, take care of the housing, maybe have a rental property on a college campus? Or do we want to buy a traditional, maybe long-term rental property here in the Tomball Cypress area that we can rent out on a revolving basis? Or maybe we want to do a short-term rental property in the hill country that we can use when we want with our friends and family and then rent out when we're not using it. Or do we just kind of stick to the traditional IRAs and 401ks? And I tell you, by preparing for this, there's no doubt that we want to get into real estate investing. I've had clients and I've heard many people say the biggest regret they have when it comes to real estate investing is that they didn't start earlier or they didn't buy more. So that's where we're at with this. And we're going to be bringing some of this to you guys tonight. One guy I often turn to when it comes to advice or suggestions on this is my good friend Chris Bonning. Chris is a mortgage lender himself with New City Mortgage. He's helped plenty of our clients buy their primary home. He helps people finance their investment property. So he gets it from a financing perspective. But Chris is actually a pretty big real estate investor himself. And Chris, if I could just have you on mute for a second, I want to bring you in, introduce yourself real quick, and maybe talk about some of the real estate investments you've personally participated in to get some context.
Yeah, thank you, DT. First off, I appreciate you having me. I'm Chris Wanted with New City Mortgage, CEO and president. Have done a tremendous amount of real estate investing, probably over a 23-year period. I was thinking back. We've done college properties, condos on campuses. We've done a beach house in Florida. Currently have a beach house down in Galveston that we have on a 2-year rental, short-term rental. The only thing I have not done is fix and flip. So other than that, I've been really love doing it, been quite successful and have a lot of fun with it.
Awesome. Well, we're going to bring you back in later to talk about some more things, but let me just kind of set some expectations while we get started here. This, again, is just an introduction into real estate investing. We're going to keep it kind of high level tonight, kind of give you a broad overview, give you some practical things to think about to maybe spark some new ideas. And Chris and I are going to both be available afterwards for some one-on-one conversations if you want to have those. And if you have questions, go ahead and be dropping those into the Zoom or into the comments in the Q&A. We'll answer a few of those at the end. And we had some good questions that came in as well during that. But let's dive into this. Let's start out by talking about the real benefits and the why behind real estate. One guy I'm going to quote a lot tonight is my mentor, Brian Buffini. And he put it this way one time when he said, the number one way to own wealth in the world, in the history of mankind, is through real estate. Andrew Carnegie put it this way over 100 years ago when he said, 90% of all millionaires become so through owning real estate. He went on to say that more money has been made in real estate than in all other industrial investments combined. Now, he said that over 100 years ago, and is still true today. Food, shelter, and clothing are our three biggest needs as humans, and real estate is all about that shelter. People are always going to need a place to live. Now, Warren Buffett always says to invest in things you understand, and real estate fits that perfectly because real estate's something that you do understand. You live in a home, you know how it works, and it's really not that complicated. In fact, one thing I tell all of our clients, especially our first-time home buyers, is that home you own right now could make a great rental property in the future, especially if you bought that home before COVID or you refinanced during the low interest rates during COVID. You could have a property that makes a great cash flowing property from the get go. So that's one of the most overlooked, easiest ways to get into rental real estate is when you go to buy your next house, think about keeping your current house and as a rental. All right, so let's get into the nitty gritty here. And let's talk about the five key reasons real estate has made more millionaires than any other investment. Well, the first one is the obvious one, it's wealth building through appreciation and equity growth. While there are always market fluctuations, real estate tends to historically appreciate well over time. So while you're living in a property or owning an investment property, the value of that property is going up over time while you're paying down the mortgage. So that's equity growth in two different directions. A second key reason is the monthly cash flow potential. By renting out a property, you can receive rental income while offsetting your expenses while the property is appreciating. John Stuart Mill, he was a political columnist, and he once put it this way: landlords grow rich in their sleep without risking, working, or economizing. What he really means is that landlords benefit from the mere ownership of property through rental income, while most people have to work and labor to receive rent to receive cash flow. A third big key reason is real estate's a tangible, stable asset, and people are always going to need it. Unlike a paper investment or a digital investment, real estate is something that you can touch and you can hold it and you can improve on it. Housing's always going to be in demand. Franklin D. Roosevelt put it this way when he said, real estate cannot be lost or stolen, nor can it be carried away. Purchased with common sense, paid for in full, and managed with reasonable care, it is about the safest investment in the world. A fourth key benefit is a hedge against inflation. And we've been living in inflationary times lately. And when inflation is rising, the value of the dollar is going down, but assets tend to rise in value. So that means property values are going up during inflationary times, rental rates are going up during inflationary times, and your mortgage is fixed throughout it all. So it's a huge a hedge against inflation. And finally, a fifth key advantage is the tax advantages. And we don't have too much time to talk about all the advantages here, but you can depreciate your values property over time. You can deduct your expenses, not just your mortgage interest, but other expenses that you incur as a landlord. So real estate has tax advantages that other types of investments just can't really match. Chris, I want to bring you back in here real quick. You've talked to me about this, about how if people invest money into just savings or they put it into a low cost index fund or if in paid for rental or paid for real estate. Talk about this slide for a little bit and what happens.
Yeah, absolutely. So, as you guys know, there's a never a shortage of places to put your money to invest it, whether it be a savings account, a low cost index fund, or real estate property. So, if we're looking at having $1 million in cash, and say you put that in a savings account, your yield per annual yield per year is going to be about 4,700. A low cost index fund, clipping at about 4%, will earn you about 40,000. Paid for rental property will net you about 7% or 70,000 off of that million. So it's quite a bit of money. If we look at that 50K in expenses, that's actually a write-off as well. Plus, DT, the one thing that it does not take into account is the appreciation year over year of the property. So as you alluded to, you're earning gain or profit in four different ways.
That's right. That's right. We're going to bring you back here in a minute too, so don't go far. But you've heard the phrase, don't wait to buy real estate and wait. Let's just look at a classic example here. Let's say you bought a house for $250,000 and held on to it for 10, 20, or 30 years. On the left-hand side, we look at what 3% appreciation would do. At 3% after 10 years, that house is worth $335,000. After 20 years, it's worth 450. And if you hold on to it for 30 years, it's worth over 600,000. But let's look at what happens if you get 4% appreciation per year. Well, after 20 years, that property's already doubled in value at almost $550,000. And after 30 years, it's more than tripled in value at over $800,000. So if 4% sounds a little high or a little exotic, over the last 50 years, US real estate has appreciated at about 4.25% per year. So, if anything, these numbers are a little conservative. So, the mindset should not be buy, fix, and sell. It should be buy, fix, and hold. And let me just stop here for a second to say if you're watching this and you're currently renting, I highly encourage you to become a homeowner. That's your first step. The average net worth of a homeowner is 36 times that of a renter, according to the Federal Reserve. And that gap is widening fast. So Brian always says, real estate is hard in the beginning and easy at the end. Time is the investor's greatest gift because even if you make a mistake, but hold on to it long enough, it's not a mistake. It usually works out in the end. So I encourage you to fight, bite, scratch, and claw to get into home ownership and then get into an investment property. I know this sounds elementary, but you got to work hard to increase your income and make some sacrifices to reduce your expenses so that you can create that surplus of funds. And once you have that surplus of funds, I encourage you to invest it into a property. So when it comes time to investing into a property, Brian always talks about how there's one key question that if you have to ask yourself. And if you answer this question or know how to attack it, it can make all the difference in the world. And that question is this: what do you want most? Appreciation or cash flow? Now, if you ask anybody what they want, they're going to say, well, I want both. And of course, we want both. That's why anyone would invest. But you have to start with one, pick one lane. See, a lot of people try to chase both and they end up missing both. But if you focus on one lane from the get go, you can eventually get the other. So, what does it mean when we talk about investing for appreciation? Well, what that means is you're betting on the property's value growing significantly over time. The wealth is in the long term equity gain, not necessarily in the monthly cash flow. So, an example of that might mean buying in a high demand area, like maybe in Houston, like the Heights or Montrose or the Woodlands, or maybe even Austin a few years ago. You might just break even on the rental income or even lose a couple $100 per month or per year or per month, excuse me, on that. But over 10 years, that property could be worth hundreds of thousands of dollars more. So location is always key in real estate, right? But especially when you're investing for appreciation. Those areas that have appreciated well in the past are likely to continue to appreciate well into the future. So the investor's mindset when it comes to appreciation is I'll break even or close to it now because the big win is appreciation down the road. Now, a couple downsides for investing into appreciation. It's usually a bit more expensive to get into. It's going to be a higher price point, maybe more money down to get into it. And it's usually a longer term hold. In fact, the minimum hold when investing for appreciation should be about 10 years, as you saw on that graph. And it usually takes a little bit longer to get to cash flow. There's things that happen during it. You got to replace the plumbing. You got to fix the AC. The HOA president's getting on your butt. You got to fix the roof. There's things that happen. It's a long-term battle and it can be frustrating. But if you do it right over time, you can end up very well. You've often heard that phrase that days are long, but the years are short. Usually that's in the context for family and kids. And I'll tell you, that's true. But it's really true when it comes to investing for appreciation as well. So what's the other side of the coin? Investing for cash flow is a totally different business. What that means is that you're focused on the monthly rental income exceeding your monthly expenses, like your mortgage, your taxes, and insurance. The wealth is in the steady income stream. It's your monthly paycheck from real estate. So an example for investing for cash flow would be buying in a more affordable, stable rental markets, maybe like Tomball, Cypress, Katy, or Conroe here in the Houston area. Good rental markets, good school districts, close access to employment hubs. You might clear 200 to 400, maybe even 500 a month after expenses. So the investor's mindset for cash flow is I want the property to put money in my pocket every month or even replace my income over time. So some tips for cash flow when investing for cash flow is you have to manage it well. It's like running a separate business. You have to keep your expenses lean and sustainable. Now, that doesn't mean being a slumlord by any means, but you just don't want to over improve the property. One question to ask yourself is, would I be comfortable with my friend or relative staying in the property for a week or so? One thing I tell all my landlord clients is the better the property, the better the tenant. And I've seen this play out. I've seen some landlords who don't really take care of their property and they wonder why their tenant doesn't take care of their property. We have other landlords who take immaculate care of their property from the yard to the inside. And lo and behold, that tenant starts to take care of the property. It's a mindset thing. But again, you don't want to over improve the property. Benjamin Franklin once put it this way. He said, beware of little expenses. A small leak will sink a great ship. So ultimately, you have to decide what's most important to you, appreciation or cash flow. Remember, appreciation is the long game and cash flow is the monthly paycheck. If you're a younger investor, you might want to be looking more towards appreciation as your strategy because you have time on your side. You need time on your side. If you're an older investor, 75, 80 or more, you may not want to be investing for appreciation. You may want to be looking more towards cash flow for income now. Both can build wealth if you do it right and you stay consistent with it. So once you've got that figured out, what are the different types of real estate investing that you can get into? Well, some of these are the most common ones all about. You got the long-term rental. Those are your buy and hold. It's a property that you have, you rent it out for 12 months, 18 months, or 24 months at a time. Then you have your short-term rentals. I got to tell you, this is one that Xanath and I are really interested in the most. These are like your Airbnbs and VRBOs, right? I don't know if you're like us, but if you've ever stayed at a really nice Airbnb on the beach or in the hill country, you come back from that thinking, what would it be like if we bought a property like that for us to use with our family and friends and just rented it out when we weren't using it? That's what a short-term rental is, or what some call a lifestyle asset. And that is one of our clients does this, and she believes that that is the most profitable way to invest in real estate, short term and long term. And then next, you got your fix and flips. And if you've ever watched HGTV, you find that more people make it look like it's successful than they really do, but there are some who do it very well. We have one client who, in my mind, is the queen of fix and flips. She's done it better than anyone we've ever seen. She'll know how to identify a property, know exactly how much to put into it, and then we help her sell it once it's all done. And these are not lipstick on a pig. Some of the profits she's made for some of these properties on after fixing and flipping them is astonishing. But you got to know what you're doing. One thing she always talks about when you're buying into an investment property, you make money on the buying side. And you have to have two exit strategies. So, for example, let's say you're trying to buy a short-term rental, right? You're cash flowing, you're renting it out. Well, what if all of a sudden the HOA or the city permitting says, "Hey, we're not going to allow any short-term rentals in here anymore"? Do you have an exit strategy? Is there a second exit strategy you have where they're converting that into a long-term rental or maybe being able to sell that property? That's a huge thing to look at is not only when you buy, you make money on the buying side, but having that second exit strategy if you need it. And finally, some other forms of real estate investing. You got the multifamily, you have commercial real estate investing, even storage units is an example of that. So, Chris, if you can unmute yourself, I want to bring you back in here real quick. From a financing perspective, kind of talk to us about how we buy these properties. What's different between buying a primary property versus an investment property? Is it always 20% down? Maybe take a couple minutes if you can and talk about that.
Yeah, absolutely. Sure will. So we finance a tremendous amount of investment property. And the really cool thing is whether you have a little bit of money to put into it or a lot, we can help you. And I feel like we have plenty of options available for financing. So where the rubber and the road meet is come to the meeting. DT presents it super well. He's very knowledgeable. And how do we get started, right? How do we buy our first one? So we're going to look at your DNA as a borrower. Are you W-2 wage earner? Do you have money saved up? Perhaps you're self-employed and you write everything off. So we have different types of lending that we can reach out and provide the financing based on your unique situation. So I don't want anyone from this call to go away and qualify or disqualify yourself. We have a tremendous amount of options that are out there. So to touch on a couple, the first one is a traditional Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, Ginnie Mae loan. Typically, those are with 20% down. Some people put more. We can go as little as 15% down, but most people put 20% down, no PMI, and it's a full underwrite, just like you bought your home. We look at your income, your debts, and figure out how much you can afford, work with you on your down payment, and then we get you an approval letter over to DT or Xanath, and they'll take you out and start looking at property. The second one we have is called a DSCR, and it stands for Debt Service Coverage Ratio. With this particular loan, we don't have to look at your financials at all. If you have 20% down, we look at the asset. So what will the asset rent for? And the debt service means will it rent for more than the payment? So it doesn't have to be a one-to-one ratio. Let's say you've got a mortgage payment of 3,500 and it's going to rent for 3,300. That's okay. But we try to get it around 1% if we can. Your terms are a little bit more favorable. So in doing the process, we will uncover or discover what type of financing would be best for you. Typically, it's based on your income. Do you report income? Do you not report income? A lot of our investors have a big 401k or a big IRA. They're doing withdrawals to come up with the 20% and investing that into real estate to diversify. So, conventional DSCR, we also have a portfolio loan where we're looking at different items such as are you self-employed? Can you give us a profit and loss statement? Maybe you haven't filed your taxes. So the bottom line, we can't really unpack all the loans today, but if you guys want to hop on a quick call, have a 5 to 15 minute discussion on your unique situation, we can do that. And one last thing I'll leave you guys with is a lot of times the number one way people get money to invest in real estate is from their current home. They will either sell the current home, buy a new one, take the proceeds to invest in additional property, or we can do a HELOC or a cash out loan where you remain inside your current residence. We take that money and then we can give you an equity loan. So I had a customer recently took 200,000 in equity out, and he's now bought 7 properties with that. So a lot of options and a lot of good ways to attack it.
That's awesome, Chris. And as you can tell, this guy has a lot of context, a lot of information. He's just scratching the surface. Chris, we may actually have you do a class after these other classes we'll do next year that we'll talk about specifically diving more into that. But thanks for bringing that to us. Let me kind of finish on a couple things. I do want to get you out of here in 30 minutes. Let me talk about why Houston is such a great rental market or real estate market to buy into and why now is such a good time. Well, we've been selling real estate here for the last 13 years in the greater Houston area. And I don't think I want to sell real estate anywhere else. Houston is such a strong and diverse economy. We got manufacturing, oil and gas, healthcare and medical, a rapidly growing tech industry. So when you have that kind of diversity in the economy, that means you have consistent population growth and consistent job growth. And when you have those two things, that's huge for real estate values and rental demand. And let me talk about something else when it comes to employment, by the way. When you're talking about investing into an area or a city, it's not just the number of jobs in a city, it's the quality of jobs in a city. If you're in an area where incomes are going up and wages are going up, people will always make sacrifices for their housing. So the more money they make, if they're in an industry in an area that has increasing incomes, that's great for rental properties and the demand for them. Houston, as you know, is much more affordable than a lot of the other cities in our state, like Austin. We have a guy on the call here from Dallas to here tonight. It's much more affordable here in Houston. And, in the other out of state markets too. Texas in nature is a very landlord friendly. They have very favorable laws toward landlords. If you ever have to evict a tenant, it's much more of a streamlined process to do so here in Texas compared to some other states. We also don't have a lot of statewide rental control policies here in Texas, too. So, Texas is a very landlord friendly state to operate in and to invest in. And then finally, why is now a good time? If you've been following me for the last year, if you get my monthly emails, I always talk about how these interest rates are going to start come down, and they already are starting to trickle down. Today, I think they're at what, 6.125% or so, Chris. But I've been saying once these interest rates get below 6, watch out. We got a lot of pent up demand of buyers who have been sitting on the sidelines. They're going to rush into the market. I think we're going to look back and realize that quarter 4 of 2025 here and the first few months of 2026 before we get into that spring market. Well, we'll look back and realize that was a very advantageous time to get into the market. We have a surplus of supply and not a whole lot of demand. we're out of that seller's market we were in COVID. We are absolutely into a buyer's market now. So now is a really good time to be negotiating and getting deals when you don't have a lot of competition. That competition's coming in the spring or summer. So if you're ever serious about this, now in early 2026 could be a great time to get into that. So let's just do a quick recap here. We started talking about why real estate is so beneficial and those key benefits to owning real estate, from wealth accumulation to the monthly cash flow to the tax benefits. Then we talked about deciding, what do you want most, appreciation or cash flow? Remember, pick one lane from the beginning and you might eventually get the next. Then we talked about different types of real estate investing: long-term rental, short-term rental, and fix and flips. And remember, we're going to do individual classes on these next year, where we're going to do deep, deep dives into each one of these. How do you evaluate it? How do you assess its profitability? How do you decide what that second exit strategy is going to be? And then Chris talked to us about different ways to finance properties. There's a whole lot of different ways. It's not just your income. You can base it off the property's potential rental income to get a loan on that as well. And then we finished with talking about why Houston is such a great market to invest in and why now is such a good time to invest in. So, bottom line, we really do believe that real estate is one of the best ways to build long-term wealth. And we're excited to keep these conversations going. And let me just very candid with you right here, right now. We've helped a lot of people buy their primary home. That's always going to be our bread and butter. But I want to be that real estate agent that you turn to for questions about investing into real estate. And I want to be that realtor that helps you find those properties and build your portfolio through real estate investments. I want to be that guy for you. So what that may look like is grabbing a cup of coffee sometime or scheduling a phone call where we can talk about your specific situation. And of course, I got guys like Chris here who can help us on things that I may not be aware of, especially on the financing side. But everyone's path is different, and a personal conversation is kind of the best way to get started on that to gain some clarity. So our contact information is up here as well. If you can reach out at any time. Chris and I are going to be available after the Zoom here to help answer any questions. But for those that got to get going tonight, we understand. We appreciate you being here. And remember, put your name up here. I know a lot of them defaulted to Xana because we're going to draw a drawing in the next few days. We'll call you if you won this Arctic bag. So thank you guys for being here tonight. We're going to open it up to any questions that may have come in on the chat. I know we got some questions that came in before. If there's not any question, but Xanath, I may actually turn it over to you real quick. And Chris, you be available on this too. But do we have any questions from the Zoom? And maybe we can even unmute a few people here tonight as well.
Hi, everyone. I don't have any questions on the chat, but
Okay.
hang on. Andrew says, great job, DT. But we
Hey, Andrew.
we did receive questions from when people
Yeah.
pre-registered. One of the questions was from Haley, and she asked, what is something you wish you had done in your 20s to get ahead?
Chris, I'm going to turn that one over to you. You've been doing this longer than me. You're a little bit older than me too, brother. If you were 20, had to go back, what would you change?
Yeah, thank you, DT. I appreciate you pointing that out. I tell you, that's a great question. The number one thing, I want to say two things. Number one, I never would have sold any house I ever bought.
Hmm.
If I could go back and do it again, I would have retained every property that I ever bought. The second thing is I always, my advice to investing is invest in in the area you know.
Yeah.
And the one mistake I've made out of 25 properties that I lost money on was taking a flyer on a property that I didn't know the area. Somebody told me it was a great deal, and it was not. So those are my two tips.
Zan, we had one more that I want him to answer too. I think Simon asked it. Ask Simon's question.
Yes, Simon asked, how to cash flow when taxes and insurances are so high?
Yeah,
Hmm.
great question. There may just be some properties that do not cash flow based on the market and what the rentals are going for. So the big thing, guys, is buy properties when they're on sale. And
Hmm.
one of the things DT brought up is we're oversaturated in inventory. I would gladly buy a property today, take $100 to $300 a month loss on a property, write it off on my taxes against my income, but knowing that that property is going to go from 500,000 to 800,000 over the next 5 years. So I will lose $300 a month every day to make 50,000 over 2 years.
That's good stuff. You told me that one time, and everyone always says they got to get that 1% rule. Hey, if I buy a property for 300,000, I want it to rent for 3,000. I don't know how feasible that is anymore, but you brought that up to me one time. I don't care if I lose even a couple $100 per month. That long-term gain is what I'm really after, and that was pretty eye-opening for me.
Yeah. Guys, it's all about buying when properties are on sale. We got one in Florida one time, just a smoking deal. Everybody was bailing out. We got a beach house, a place that we went, held on to it for 2 years and made over $500,000 on holding that property. So I cannot stress enough, buy when the market's on sale. Right, doing your first one is the scariest and it's the hardest thing, but you
Yeah.
will look back and be so glad you did it. So my advice is just get after it, pick a property, and hold on to it, hold on to it, hold on to it.
Right. Zenith, I'm going to ask this one question. Gail asked this before. Hey, what if I want to lease out my current house if we just want to travel for a few months? Gail, her and her husband are retired and they want to travel. To that, I would say look into a short-term rental. See how long you're going to be gone. You got to position your property in the right way. You got to make sure the area you live in allows short-term rentals, of course. But having your property as a short-term rental, if you want, I know Gail has that home paid off, so that would make a great rental property from the get-go. And then once you're ready to come back, just take it off the short-term rental market. But you go travel and make some money while you're there, and you can have a property manager handle that for you while you're gone on the cleanings and in between tenants. That's an easy, great way if you have a property that you're not using to go rent. I'm telling you guys, short-term rentals, Airbnbs, there's some hindrances on those, and some places are cracking down on those a little bit. But that's one of the most exciting forms of real estate investing that we're diving into soon. I think that's going to be our first one, hopefully. So we'll see.
Yeah. Andrew is asking, what is the best place in Houston right now?
Well, it depends on what you're going for, right? If it's appreciation or cash flow, I always go back to that question. I'm biased on Tomball. I tell you, Tomball ISD, I would put Tomball schools up against any of them. The Woodland schools, Katy schools, any of them. I think it always starts with the location, access to freeways, access to schools, um, job, employment, all those like I talked about earlier. But a lot of people say you should buy where you are. I think Chris, you mentioned that. I've heard someone said if you're going to own a rental property, especially a long-term rental property, you should maybe have it within a 5 to 10 mile radius. Well, obviously, Chris doesn't do that. He has properties out in Florida that he handles well. But some people believe in that. But I would say start where you are, where you know the market best, and then decide what's best for you. Some markets, you got to put at least 20% down to even think about cash flowing. If you're out in San Diego, California, 40% down, 50% down may not even get you to cash flow. So it depends on what you're going for, appreciation versus cash flow. If it's appreciation, you might be looking in the Woodlands or the Heights. If it's cash flow, it's more Tomball, Cypress area. But again, it depends on what your goals are, how much money you have to put down, and what you're trying to get, appreciation or cash flow.
DT, if I could add one
Yeah.
quick item to that. When you're focusing on real estate investing, a lot of people, if you're too heavily focused on that monthly cash flow, you may tend to be treating it like an ATM, right? Like I'm going to
Mhm.
put $40,000 into this property, and each month I'm going to take my debit card and cash it out. Real estate investing, think of it more 401k-ish, if you will. You did a great, tremendous point of pointing out leveraging time. And I
Yeah.
think as long as you hold your property for a 2 year period and you rent it out, you can then sell it without capital gain, tax free, and reinvest it into another property. And that's a pro tip or a hack that we've used quite a bit is that 2 year period. It doesn't mean we sell right at 2 years. The market may not be ready for that. It may be year 3, year 4, year 10, but hold on to that property until the market's right. Then you can sell it, double down, and buy two more tax free.
I love it. I love it. Are you reading Ian's question next, honey, in the chat?
Yes.
Yeah, read that one. And Chris, you
Uh,
answer this one, brother.
sorry, Chris, you're getting all the questions. Ian says, I've heard about BRRR strategy. So buy, rehab, rent, refinance, repeat. If you have any thoughts on that.
Yeah, no, Ian, that's a great way to invest. Most of the time, if you're going to do the Burr method, you're going to buy a distressed property. So you're looking for something that's going to take a little bit of money to pour into it. You're getting a property, good location. Once you put your money into it, you're going to have some appreciation because you got such a good deal on it, right? You got somebody who was distressed, had to get rid of the property. So you buy it right, rehab it, save money on the rehab, right? Rent it out for however long it takes, then you can refinance it to a lower rate, get cash out, take that cash. So it's a way to continue to buy property without having to sell the property. And a lot of guys are really good at it, identifying that distressed property. If you're going for rental and the property in distress, it may be a little challenging to do that. So when you're talking to DT, kind of get that set up with him and he'll know what to look for.
Awesome. Well, I think that was all the questions on here. And like I said, if you'll have more questions, Chris and I are always available to answer these afterward. We want to kind of continue these conversations as they go on. But again, make sure we have your name. I still see some Xaneth Thompsons up there, and she's only one person. But we're going to be doing these giveaways for these really cool Arctic bags on that. And like I said, if there's anyone that could benefit from this video, we highly encourage you to share it with them. We're going to be sending this video out to all of our clients in the next few days. But again, guys, it's almost 7:37, so we're right on time, even with the Zoom. Thank you guys again for being here. You guys are awesome. You always support us. We really, really appreciate that. And we're excited to see what people can do with this. I know we're going to be getting into this too, and probably be calling you soon about that stuff, Chris. So, hey, Chris, thank you for being on this with us tonight, man. I know you got a lot going on. You got a kiddo in college. You're flying out to Oklahoma tomorrow to see her and watch the football game. So, thank you, man, for being here. We really appreciate all you do for us. And thank you, Zen, for helping on the slides on the back end and dealing with me through all this research and getting ready for this. So thank you, guys. Everyone have a good night. We appreciate y'all being here.